Welcome to my channel, and today I have a horror, scary story ghost for you, so let's begin. A young mother, Sarah, was home alone with her 6-month-old son, David, when she heard strange noises in her house. She dismissed them as the sounds of an old settling house until the noises became more frequent and more sinister. One evening, Sarah was feeding David when the lights flickered and died, plunging the house into darkness. Just as she was about to light a candle, she heard a loud bang, followed by what sounded like screams in the attic above their bedroom. Terrified, Sarah held David close and tried to calm him as she called out for her husband, Mark. But there was no answer. Mark was out on a business trip and wouldn't be back for another week. As the night wore on, the noises continued, and Sarah's fear grew. She could hear footsteps pacing back and forth in the attic, as well as what sounded like furniture being dragged across the floor. By the time the first rays of sunlight peeked through the windows, Sarah was exhausted and terrified. She had spent the entire night huddled in a corner of the bedroom with David, too afraid to move or make a sound. When Mark finally came home a week later, Sarah told him about the terrifying experience she'd had. At first, he thought it was just a figment of her imagination, but as they began to explore the house together, they started to find evidence of something strange. They found scratches on the walls and furniture, as well as what looked like footprints in the dust on the attic floor. Determined to get to the bottom of what was going on, they called in a paranormal investigator named John. John was a former police officer who had a degree in psychology and criminology. He was skeptical of the paranormal, but intrigued by the case, he agreed to help. When John arrived at the house, he brought with him a team of 2 assistants and a plethora of high-tech equipment, including cameras, audio recorders, and electromagnetic field meters. After interviewing Sarah and Mark and hearing about their experiences, John and his team set up their equipment in the attic where the strange noises had been coming from. For the next few hours, they sat quietly in the dark, listening to any sounds that might indicate the presence of a ghost. Suddenly, one of the assistants, a young woman named Lisa, gasped and pointed to the camera. On the monitor, they could see the faint outline of a man standing at the top of the attic stairs. The man seemed to be wearing clothes from the 1800s and had a long white beard. Startled by what they were seeing, the team quickly turned off the camera and tried to leave the attic. But as they were leaving, the lights flickered back on, and the ghost was gone. They rushed downstairs to tell Sarah and Mark what they had seen, and the 4 of them returned to the attic to try to capture the ghost on camera again. This time, they set up a camera with a night vision camera and waited. For what felt like hours, nothing happened. Just as they were about to give up hope of seeing the ghost, John noticed a slight change in the temperature. He turned to the monitor just in time to see the ghost appear again. This time, it was standing right in front of the camera. The ghost seemed to sense their presence and turned its head slowly to look directly at them. Its face was pale and gaunt, and its eyes were hollow and black. Before any of them could react, the ghost vanished again, leaving them in darkness once more. Shaken by what they had witnessed, the team decided to call it a night and pack up their equipment. As they were doing so, Lisa noticed something strange in the corner of the attic. It was a small wooden box that hadn't been there when they arrived. Curious, she opened the box and found a stack of old yellowed letters inside. The letters were written in a beautiful flowing script and dated back to the 1800s. Lisa handed the letters to John, who began to read them aloud. The letters were from a man named Thomas Blackwood to his wife Martha. In the letters, Thomas described how he had recently moved into the house with his wife and how he had already begun to feel the presence of another person in the house. He wrote of hearing footsteps and voices and of seeing the apparition of an old man in a top hat and cane. Thomas had written to Martha just days before his untimely death in a carriage accident. The last letter was dated the day of his death and in it he described how he had seen the ghost of the old man in the house and how he believed that the ghost was trying to warn him of some impending danger. As John read the final letter, the team could feel the temperature in the attic drop. The hair on the back of their necks stood up, and they could hear the sound of footsteps pacing back and forth in the hallway outside the attic door. Suddenly, the air grew cold and a strong wind began to blow through the attic. The team huddled together in the corner as they heard the sound of heavy footsteps descending the attic stairs. Then, as quickly as it had started, the wind died down and the footsteps stopped. They waited in silence for several minutes. Then John slowly reached out and turned on the attic light. To their surprise, they saw that the wooden box was now open and the letters were scattered on the floor around them. As if to confirm that they were not alone in the attic, the team heard a loud bang, followed by what sounded like laughter. They all screamed and ran for the door, tripping over each other in their haste to escape. Once they were safely downstairs, they agreed to never go back into that attic again. They helped Sarah and Mark pack up their things and move into a new house. And to this day, none of them will ever forget the terrifying experience they had in that haunted attic. Some people might say that the ghost was just an overactive imagination, but those who believe in ghosts believe that the spirit of Thomas Blackwood still haunts the house, forever searching for his Martha. And every once in a while, he lets his presence be known to those who live in his house. So if you ever visit the house, be sure to stay away from the attic. Who knows, you might just be able to hear the sound of footsteps pacing back and forth, just like the ghost of Thomas Blackwood did. And thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this horror-scary story ghost. If you did, please give me a thumbs up and subscribe so you do not miss out on any of my future videos. And if you want to hear more stories like this one, you can listen on my podcast. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time.